Hello again, everyone. Thanks so much for attending this session on AutoSimply barcode and ORCID bin tracking. So what we have here is an integrated barcode solution, which is quite different from traditional barcoding solutions in the sense that it integrates itself directly into Sage 300 and it operates as a Wi-Fi service. So in order to connect to the barcode system, we need the IP address of the SQL Server and Sage 300 application server. Typically, those are the same servers, but this is separated on the setup screen just in case you have a separate database server from your application server. And it runs under Internet Information Services. And then we need to be able to log into the SQL database as well as have a login for Sage 300. The system supports multiple barcode users that you define access rights to based on the transactions that we support within Sage 300. So from an operations standpoint, you can integrate with the PO module of Sage 300 and scan items into the warehouse, generating a PO receipt entry. If you're shipping items out of the warehouse, there's the OE shipment function on the barcode. And for inventory control purposes, we manage things like stock counts, transfers, and other types of inventory control transactions. So think of the barcode system really as a web interface into the Sage 300 modules. It also supports the manufacturing solution that we just talked about in the last session. So when we talked about issuing raw materials or receiving finished goods after production is completed, those things can also be scanned with barcodes, and it generates the transaction within Sage 300 in real time. So essentially the barcode interface is really a separate user interface that can be running on a handheld device as opposed to a traditional barcode scanner. We support things like smartphones as well as iPads, and I'll talk a little bit more about those form factors and the barcode labels themselves in just a moment. But we also support things like ORCID bin tracking. So if you activate ORCID bin tracking, then you can also do bin inquiries and what we call bin transfers for putaways and picks when you're moving items into and out of a warehouse by a particular bin location. So those are the types of entries that we support, and you can define those at a user level. And then the user master is identifying all of your barcode users. So something to note here is that when you license the barcode module, you're licensing the barcode application as well as a user license for each of your barcode users. Now, when I say each of your barcode users, let me clarify that the licensing is what we call concurrent user licensing. So you can actually share the barcode user licenses among barcode users. But with a concurrent license, just like the land pack license in Sage 300, you could have, for instance, 10 barcode users, but only license 5 barcode users. So that would give you a maximum of 5 barcode users at one time. But then, so those 5 user licenses could be shared among 10 barcode users. That's essentially what we mean by saying they're concurrent. They're not specifically named to a particular user. But you would want to identify specific barcode user names because the system is tracking the activity by barcode user. And for performance and audit capability, you generally want to know who's doing what within the warehouse. So we would recommend setting up as many barcode users uniquely as you can, and then determine the number of licenses you need to support those barcode users. And in terms of options, we have different barcode formats that are supported, specialized formats, if you will, called GS1, which is used to track lot information or serial information, as well as item codes and other best before date type information. It's typically used in food, whereas HIBC is typically used within the medical industry to track similar type of information, but related to medical instruments. Now, when we talk about the barcodes themselves, barcodes don't have to be very sophisticated. In fact, if you choose to use a barcode system within Sage 300, you can literally get those barcodes for free. And that is, a barcode is really just a different kind of font that you install for Crystal. And so anything that you generate as an alphanumeric character within Sage 300 can be translated into a simple barcode. Now, these are what they call barcode 39 or barcode 128 formats. They're one-dimensional barcodes. So in a case like this where you had to track lot information as well, you would need two separate barcodes, one for the item code, one for the lot number. When you incorporate GS1, you can embed that all in one barcode. So the less expensive approach is to use simple one-dimensional barcodes, and you can download those fonts for free and install them into Sage 300 as a font within Crystal Reports. But as I mentioned, there is the ability to use more sophisticated barcodes if you want to. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about adoption rates. AutoSimply is known for manufacturing, but in fact, we have more people in the distribution business using AutoSimply barcode. And people ask us, do we have to have manufacturing to use barcode from AutoSimply? The answer is no. We support the distribution suite or the operations suite of Sage 300, and that's where most of our clients are. And then we have about 30% of them in manufacturing. And the barcode system, the way it's been developed, is that it supports Windows CE, but it also supports Android devices and Apple iOS devices. And that's particularly important because Windows CE is end of life this year. So if you're using Windows CE devices, if you can get them ported to Android operating systems, terrific. Otherwise, you're going to need to look at new handheld devices. And when we talk about handheld devices, you can use Android phones or tablets, or handheld computers, or Apple smartphones, Apple iPads. All of those are perfectly legitimate application hardware devices to use with AutoSimply barcode. Now, when we look at industrial level handheld computers, they look a lot like smartphones. And that's by design because people are familiar with smartphone devices. And the benefit of these devices is that they have better battery life than smartphones and generally better scanning capability because they're built purpose-use devices for barcode scanning. And the interface that you're going to see when I open up my barcode solution today is exactly the way it appears on these handheld devices. And that's because these applications are web-based applications built with what they call responsive design. And that's just a fancy term for saying that whatever size the screen is on the handheld device, those icons on the screen will get sorted and ordered on the screen based on the form factor, the screen size that's on that device. So as I say, you could use an Android phone and you'll be able to use scanning or the camera feature to take pictures of barcodes or text information on a smartphone if you choose to use that. But generally speaking, Android phones are just as expensive as these industrial level handheld computers. And the benefit again is that you're going to get better battery life and generally better scanning technology in the industrial level computers. Now, we talked about GS1, and GS1 is a multi-information or multi-dimensional barcode that includes information like the product, SKU number, lot number, serial number, expiry date. You can include quantity information. There's a complete list of specification documents available on the web that you can access. And this is what I mean by a GS1 barcode. It's incorporated in it multiple segments with multiple pieces of information. We also support data matrix as well as QR code barcodes. So you have lots of choice in the type of barcode technology that you can deploy within your businesses. And this is an example of a GS1. It has a data matrix code, but also the standard barcode to incorporate lot number, expiry date, and even temperature control. And so the format includes application identifiers. This is what the standards are all about. Body, regulates the GS1 format and determined what a universal format should include, and then you pick which of those application identifiers you want to embed within your barcode. So there's a global trade identification number, the 01, and then the expiry date, and then the lot number. So this is how they break out those identifiers within a GS1 format. HIBC is for the health industry or medical instrument business, and it also includes lot, serial number, and expiry date, and there's a specification for HIBC as well. And this is an example of an HIBC format. So this is for medical instruments, and you can see the lot number information. It's also based on EDI purchasing, and it's got some description information that's specific to this type of device that the barcode's been produced for. Okay, so this is, again, got different sections where you've got the HIB number, the supplier ID, a product ID, an expiry date, and a lot number. So you can embed lots of different kinds of information into these barcodes to ensure that with one scan, you're tracking a lot of different information. Okay, so now coming back to the software, we've got the configuration, and we're going to be linking into bin tracking. So what I want to show you in the time we have is we'll do a PO receipt and we'll do a stock count. The bin, when we incorporate bin tracking, we know that we have IC locations within inventory control. And within a location, if you want to be more specific about where an item is stored, the bin number allows you to identify things like an aisle, a row, a height, a rack, a depth. However you've configured your warehouse, you can incorporate that information into a bin number that can be up to 9 or 10 alphanumeric characters. And then with each of those bins, you can determine which items are allowed within that bin. And that bin information will hold the quantity of that item within the bin, the total quantity within inventory control. So this means that you might have the same item in more than one bin, or you might have the same item that's partially binned and other items, other quantities for that same item are not in a bin. They might be in a storage room somewhere, they might be on a skid, they might be in a quarantine area that's not necessarily set up as a bin, even though I'm showing here that quarantine would be a good application for bin tracking. And then in the case where you've got lot numbers or serial numbers, you can store the serial number for all the items within the bin. So now you've got 3 levels of granularity in terms of the detail that you're keeping for your items. You've got the IC location, you've got the bin within the location, and then you might have the serial numbers or the lot numbers within the bin for that item. So we're going to look at this item here, the calculator, and you'll see that the current stocking quantity is 100, and I've got 9 lots within the system, and my last lot is 00035, okay? So we're going to do a barcode transaction where we're going to receive this item in the warehouse, and then it will update both the PO receipt as well as the bin. So to do that, let's create a purchase order within Sage 300. And this will also highlight the real-time integration between the barcode system and Sage 300. So I'll enter the vendor, and the description will be barcode PO receipt for lotted item. And I'll put that into the reference as well. And the reason I'm doing that is because it will give us this information on the barcode system. So let's say we're going to receive it into location 1, and let's say a quantity of 15 is what we want to order, and we will post. So this will create PO 43. And now typically without the barcode system, you would come into the receipt entry after somebody has received the goods into the warehouse, written down the paperwork, and then moved it up to the accounting department. A day or 2 later, you would come in and you would enter the receipt against that PO. So the last receipt is 102, the next receipt will be 103, And if I looked up vendor 1200 and I looked up the PO number that we just created, there's PO 43, and I would receive against that PO, okay, the quantity. But instead of doing that, I want to receive through the PO barcode. So I want to be able to let the people in the warehouse do the receiving and update Sage 300 directly without us having to shuffle paper between the warehouse and the back office accounting. So this is my AutoSimply barcode. I'm running this on my notebook computer, but this is the interface you would run on an Android device or an Apple device. I can run it across multiple Sage 300 companies. I log into the system as a user, and then it displays the types of functions that I have. So I have a barcode PO that does receipts and returns, barcode OE for shipments and returns, barcode IC basic, I do IC stock counts, internal usage, transfers. I have an IC extended if I want to do assembly, disassembly, or shipment receipt. And then I've got an inquiry function here. So for instance, if I wanted to see pending receipts, I could just search as of today, and it would show me all the POs that have pending receipts. Likewise, I could look at pending shipments and see all the items that need to be shipped. I could also look at bin inquiry and say, I want to look at a particular bin, let's say A010101, which is the bin we're going to use for, and it would go in and do a bin inquiry for me. So all of those are possible in the system. And the item inquiry would just be looking at a particular item and being able to search by description or by see optional field information about that item. So anything that you've got set up within Sage 300 can be visible through the barcode system. But moving back here, we want to do the PO receipt. So we can search based on document or do a finder search. So if I just go in, it will show me the most recent POs. PO 43 is the one that I just did, and it was the purchase of 15 of these calculators. And I want to receive against that PO. So I click on the item, I would scan the barcode, and I've got a quantity on the PO of 15, and let's say that's what I'm actually receiving. And then it would tell me that there's a bin associated with this item. So I would click on the bin and I would scan the bin. And the quantity that's going into that bin is 15. And then because it knows that it's a lot tracked item, it says, well, what lot number are we assigning to this? And I could put in a lot number, 36, or I could say I want to auto-generate the lot for a quantity of 15. And it would generate, and it says, please input a number for the number of lot to auto-generate. So that's going to tell me, or the number of lots I want, 1, and I'm going to generate. Oops. And it assigns the next available lot number, 00036, with the quantity of 15. And I'm okay with that. It's gone into the lot, it's gone into the bin, and I'm receiving against that PO. So I'm all done now. And I can post, and by confirming the post, it will create the PO receipt as well as the bin transfer for the put away. Okay. So that's the beauty of having the fully integrated system. It generates receipt 103 and bin transfer 24. So now if I go back into Sage 300 and I look at receipt entry, that receipt entry 103 that I just posted through the barcode is automatically updated into Sage 300 for a quantity of 15 and the lot that was assigned 0036. Likewise, within bin tracking, I've got a bin transfer, which would be a put away. So there's my PO receipt 103. The put away, for that item for a quantity of 15 into that bin. And it will show me the put away quantity. Okay. And that put away quantity shows me the lot number going into the bin. So with the scan, I've been able to update the bin. Now, if I go back to the bin setup, remember we had a quantity of 100 in that bin. So now if I look at that bin and I look at the calculator, there's 115. We've added the 15 and we've got 10 lots, and that the last lot number will be lot 36, quantity 15. So it's all fully integrated from the PO receipt standpoint into bin tracking, and it's all updated in real time from the warehouse. There's no delay. You have up-to-date product information coming from the warehouse. Now, in terms of physical inventory, traditionally, you would do your physical inventory within inventory control. But when you incorporate bin tracking, you do the physical inventory worksheet from bin tracking. And so you generate your bin worksheet by location for the items that you want to count. So in this case, let's say we've got 13 of those items counted, or we'll take A1 103. There's a quantity of 13 currently being counted. Now, if I come back to my barcode and I want to do an IC stock count, it's going to know that for this location, I'm going to have certain items that I wanted to count. And it's got the quantity of 13, but I've counted in another area of the warehouse and I found 7 more of those items. And the bin detail tells me I want to update the bin. So it knows that it's integrated into bin tracking. So it prompts you to enter the item and the quantity within that bin. Okay, so I'm okay with that. And now it would tell you if I exceed the item quantity within a bin. And so let's do, oops, 01, 01, 01. And let's go ahead and post. And so I've added 7 there. And now it's going to give me the option to override. So it could say, if I override, the total is going to be 7. But if I add, it'll take the 7 plus the 13, and it will update the stock count for location 1 into that bin for that item. So now going back into the bin inventory count for location 1, I now see it's added the 7 to the 13, and it's documented who did that count. So again, it's a real-time interface between Sage 300 and the barcode. And as I say, you can do this for all the different transactions that we identified at the very beginning of the session, where PO transactions, inventory control transactions, bin transfers, OE, manufacturing, shop floor control, all of those are possibilities using the AutoSimply barcode system. So I'll stop there, Haley, and invite any questions that you might have for me.
Okay, we do have some that have come in. Our first question is, if I purchase the AutoSimply barcode for bin tracking, do I still need to purchase the ORCID bin tracking module?
Yes, good question. So for each of the barcode modules that you see here, represented by the transaction types, you do need the corresponding back office module within Sage 300. So you would need to purchase the ORCID bin tracking as well as the AutoSimply bin tracking module. Thank you for that question.
I have another one here. It's got a bit of a description first, and then there's 2 questions. We are a distributor who has the option rotate goods back to the manufacturer within a period of 180 days if they've not been sold have not been sold. in order to bring in newer inventory. Can you explain if AutoSimply barcode can be used to identify which products have been on the shelf for X number of days? Would this be through the use of lots?
Yes, absolutely. So in the case where I've got lot tracking and the item inquiry and bin inquiry, excuse me, I would be able to log into the lot information from the barcode, and you would be able to see the expiry dates on the lot. So as you might be familiar with in inventory control, the lots have expiry dates that you can add to them. So when you include those expiry dates on the lot numbers, then we're able to see that information within the AutoSimply barcode through the inquiry function. So you would be able to see. When you incorporate bin tracking, since we're talking about bin tracking as well, under the setup options, you can have the system use the PO, or actually the OE shipment. You can base it on a bin pick setup order or the most recent, least recent put away. So you can affect a LIFO, FIFO inventory movement. So you would want the least recent put away, the oldest stock, to be picked first. And you can do that by incorporating the pick from as a least recent put away, and it makes sure that it's picking the oldest stock first. But without bin tracking, you can just use the expiry dates as well and pick by expiry date.
And we have time for one more question. What kind of barcode scanning hardware do you need, and what are the costs?
Okay, so if we go back to that little slideshow that I showed you here, this is what we call Zebra handhelds. Zebra bought out Motorola and Symbol before that. Those are generally the market leading handheld devices. And like everything in life today, you have a ton of options. So the models range from what they call a T26 all the way up to an MC 9300 and beyond. So the TC26 would be like a $700, $750 unit, but then you can also add some options to that. But it's a very cost-effective unit. Looks just like this. It's a small handheld unit, and it works fine if you're not in a too rugged environment, too dirty or dusty, or you're not going into freezers, things like that. If you're in a frozen food environment or you're in a dusty industrial area, then you'd probably want to go to a mid-range unit like a 3300, which is now going to be about $1,500 to $2,000 depending on your options. And then if you want to go all the way up to the type of scanner that you can drop from 20 feet and it's going to last, that's a 9300. You're up to like $3,500 top end. So the range is pretty wide and the functionality is pretty wide. So the best thing to do is to talk to a local Symbol reseller and determine what's going to be most appropriate for your environment.
Amazing. Thank you so much for all that information and insight. And thank you, Robert, for presenting.
All right, my pleasure.